modular layout from start to finish. Today we're picking up where we left off in the completion of the track plan transfer and how to match Cork Roadbed to that track plan so that you can get it laid around your layout with ease. With that said, there are a few reasons I've chosen to go with Cork Roadbed because it's not a necessity in model railroading. Cork Roadbed does several things. One, it deadens the sound as passing trains on your model layout go by. Two, it makes for a nice ballast profile, a nice prototypical raised track area once we get to ballasting later on. So these things are just a couple reasons why Cork Roadbed is good in my opinion. I've chosen Midwest Cork Roadbed. It's one of the more prominent names in Cork Roadbed, but I'll show you how it comes in pieces and how you get it onto your layout and the transfer starting right now. So here you have Cork Roadbed as it comes in the box. I'll put a link below to Cork Roadbed boxes from Midwest Model Railroad products, but I'll put a link to some of the best prices I can find for this. So as you saw, this was in one solid strip, but you simply tear it apart here and flip it around, and what you have is a nice smooth profile all the way down. Now this is great for the ballast to cascade off of later on when you get to scenery on your layout. So ripping the Cork Roadbed apart and flipping it around allows for the slanted slopes you see here going off each side. Now I've already laid track in areas such as here around the curve, or not the track but the actual Cork Roadbed, and we have the track here as well that I'll show you later. So the components of actually laying track include the foam base, if you're doing foam on your layout. Some people do straight off the wood. The Cork Roadbed, some people even skip the Cork Roadbed, but I explained to you earlier why I think it looks great, deadens sound, and it makes a nice ballast profile. But as you can see here, there's little dots from where the pinwheel I explained in a previous series went. That pinwheel, that little spur area, is how I transferred the SCARM track plan onto the foam. And then I went and drew a line here. Now as you can see, that pinwheel is not perfect. It kind of shifted along the way. So what I did is I drew a basic line here to show where the track will be. And then you kind of verify that the slope, the curve is not kinked, it's not nice and sweeping, it doesn't have any issues, and you can adjust it accordingly. But once your cork is down, you just simply join the two pieces to where the track plan dictated that you'd have a piece, and there you have a line. Now there's two different types of ways to really fasten these down, or at least two handy ways. You've got your T-pins here, which I picked up actually at Target. You know, Target's pretty trendy. I expected these to have like wooden accents or something, but they were plain and they weren't too expensive. It was like $3 or $4 for 100. Or you can get your thumbtacks, and you only get about 20 of these at your local big box retailer such as Lowe's, Menard, Home Depot. Now these I like a lot because on the curves they hold down better. They really bite in, and I'll show you on a different curve how they really can hold in the curve without any issue, where these don't go too deep, so you want to limit your use of these if possible to main lines or not at all. But those are a couple options for securing your cork down. Now the first thing I believe you should do is go around to your whole layout and secure the cork down so that you can see your track plan in action. Now I've done so all the way around my layout. I've got the curves, the sweeping curves, I've got the actual turnouts here, and everything goes all the way around. Don't mind the mess over here. I've been soldering some MTH crossing gates for later use. But as you can see, it sweeps all the way around and comes back over here. So there's a few pitfalls you want to avoid. One, you're going to want to make sure that your Cork Roadbed doesn't move, because if it moves and you glue it down in that new position, you're in trouble. You're going to want to take a pin of some sort. I don't have one handy, but once you have where the cork is, it doesn't hurt to mark with a pin the sides here to where the actual cork goes every few feet or so, so you know that you're gluing down in the right spot. So for actually gluing down the roadbed, you're going to want to use a couple different options. If you want to be temporary, then you'll just use nails. You can put nails in here, track nails. We'll hold it down. That's actually what I did last time. Or if you want something more permanent, you can use liquid nails for projects. This is a actual tube fed system that goes with the gun, and you can use that for your roadbed. So here's what I'm talking about here, liquid nails for projects. It is safe, and that will create a permanent bond for your cork roadbed. Now I misspoke earlier and said track. I would not use this for track. We'll get into what we use for track later on in the track laying process. But right now we're just talking about the cork roadbed. So I would highly suggest you use something like liquid nails for projects for the cork roadbed if you don't want it going anywhere. Now I learned a lesson last time on the last layout by using track nails. If it's truly a modular layout that you expect to move, these pieces of cork roadbed will come up with any movement because those nails are burrowing bigger holes in your foam. So I honestly suggest that you lean towards something more permanent. So now let's say you have your roadbed completely laid down. Before you actually lay it down, I do want to suggest one other thing when it comes to this liquid nails. You want to cut a smaller hole than you see here. This tube of liquid nails was cut open a little wide because I was using it for foam and I needed thicker beads. But you want to leave a more narrow hole on your cut of this tip when you're using it for the track, or the cork roadbed, I mean. So you lay a bead, a thin bead down here, and you're going to lay it to where it's on each side and it's equal. But you have too much, you could have the cork roadbed lift up, you could have it spurt out the sides and cause a big mess. So you want a very thin bead, but enough to actually hold this in place. So with that said, that's it. That's all I'm gonna talk about on adhesive. I'm not gonna show you in the essence of time, but let's go ahead and forward to once your cork roadbed is laid and it's actually in place either by nails or the adhesive. You cannot just start laying track after that point. I made this mistake on my last how-to build series and it can cause some problems. This cork roadbed on the edges has a very perforated edge that sometimes isn't as smooth from one piece to another. And here's a good example, or these two pieces right here. As you see on these two pieces, one is very pronounced while the other one has a nicer slope. So what you got to do is take your 60 grit sandpaper. I got this from 3M. I'm going to zoom out here and show you which product I have. I picked up this hand drywall sander from my local Menards, which is a big box retailer here. It's got a nice pad on the back with some fasteners on each end, and you simply fasten this sandpaper to this pad. It's almost a perfect fit. So that's the cheap way of doing it. I have a sander, a Dremel sander that I'll use on my own time, but you're going to want to sand this down until these are nice smooth slopes. And then you're going to want to sand the top for any imperfections, because any imperfections up top is going to cause a little rift in your track. Now this is Micro Engineering Code 83 weathered track, but any track with a imperfection can cause a lift, and all you need is a slight lift to cause your lead trucks on your diesel or steam locomotives to come off the track and derail. So it's very important that you sand both the sides for the ballast profile and the top for any imperfections. Once you've sanded that for a few seconds using your 60 grit paper, you're good to go, but you need to do that all the way around. Now let's talk about switches for a second and securing the cork roadbed for the switch. You may see some nice pre-cut out switch pads that look just like this switch here, but it's the pad for the cork roadbed. Those are expensive. They can really rack up in cost the larger your layout. So what I do is I simply overlap The cork, I take a long piece of cork and I overlap where the switch is going to go, verify where the switch is going to go, and then I mark a line where it starts, where you need the cut to start and where you need the cut to finish. And then I just cut that straight line, and you've got a nice flush piece that runs up against the main line of the cork so that you have a piece without costing extra money for your switches. So now the switch sits on there nicely and you're ready to go. Now, these pieces here have an even bigger probability of having uneven surfaces, so make sure that you're both level and you sand it down to a nice finish, because if it's more important to, or if it's important not to have unlevel track, it's even 10 times more important not to have unlevel switches. Now, we're talking about modular layouts. This is how to build a modular layout, not just a regular layout. So there's some other things you need to know. Hey, it's a good idea not to have switches over joining modules, even though my track designer Bob Olson was, I don't know if he's forced to put the switches over the modules in a couple locations because this layout's a little more complex. But another thing is you're going to have to cut your cork roadbed at each module. This is where a module ends and another one begins. You're going to want to make sure you cut your cork roadbed, because the last thing you want to do is take apart your modules and break or stretch or destroy big chunks of your cork roadbed. Another thing we'll do later in the actual layout build is you're going to want to color your cork roadbed over the switching points and the module points gray, a nice gray. I've got some gray paint from my local hobby shop. I'm sorry, my local online retailer, for big box retailer, I should say, for home improvement. But I'm going to paint a section of this gray. Now I'm doing this because the ballast is going to be something that's not as permanent on both the switches and the track, or the switches and the track joins in between each module. So painting it gray makes it less needy to put ballast on. You have less chance of getting ballast in your switches, and then the ballast that breaks up in between the modules isn't so visible with that nice gray painted there. Now you could even go a step further and speckle in different shades of gray to make it look more like ballast, but that's the general point, to make sure that those modules, when they meet end to end, and those switches are taken care of. Well, that's it on actually laying cork roadbed. I showed you how to use the track plan to actually guide you on the cork roadbed. Another thing that you want to consider is over here on the curves. You might want to take your trammel points, which I showed in another earlier video, and verify that the curves are correct before you lay track, because the curves can wave in and out inadvertently when you're laying your cork roadbed. So things like that will always set you up for success with the process of double and triple checks. I've left some space here because I'm going to be using risers to go down to foam level. And as you see, those 3 tracks there don't line up with the actual stalls of the car shop, so I'll be working on that as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on how to build a modular layout from start to finish. Take care.